Hello, my name's Cathy Sudlow. I'm the Chief Scientist for UK Biobank. I'm also a consultant neurologist working in the NHS in Scotland with a particular interest in patients who have stroke or TIA or disorders that might look as if they've had a stroke or a TIA. That's a mini stroke. I'd like to tell you a bit about why UK Biobank is important for understanding genetics and the genetic factors that might influence our risk of disease. So first of all, it's important to understand a little bit about what genetics is and what genes are. Our genes are essentially the building blocks of our life. They hold all the information that determines what kind of people we turn out to be. They contain millions of letters of coded information, and that coded information makes up about 25,000 genes or so for each individual. Much of that coded information is common between different individuals, but there are certain parts of it that vary between individuals as well, and each of us has a unique set of codes when they're taken all together. The genes don't work in isolation, though, to determine what kind of individuals we turn out to be. They work together with our environment and our experience of life, so that there's a very important interaction that goes on between our genetic code and the exposures to various environmental things and what kind of interactions we have with other people that together determine how we turn out, and indeed what our vulnerability is to develop various diseases or conditions that might happen to some unfortunate people during their lives. The more we can understand about the way in which genes and environment interact with each other to determine our risk of disease, the better we will understand the risks of various diseases. To give you an example, stroke, which is particularly familiar to me and in which I've been involved in some research about genetics, we're beginning to understand more about what the determinants of stroke are through studying the relationship between genetic code and stroke. And many studies have started to tell us some interesting bits of information about what some of the mechanisms that cause different detailed subtypes of stroke are. UK Biobank is a very powerful resource in this context because it's very large. It contains information about 500,000 people, and we already know that about 7,000 of those people had had a stroke at the time that they came into the study. We also know that, unfortunately, some thousands of them will have a stroke, or it's likely that that will happen during the course of their follow-up in the study. Because we're able to relate the information about their genetic code and all the other things that they've provided us information about in terms of their environmental exposures, their lifestyle, and the other bits of their medical history, we're able to build a complete picture of all the influences on the outcome of stroke in the individuals who are unlucky enough to have one during their follow-up. And we can make comparisons between the various different factors that affect people who've had a stroke and those factors that are present in people who haven't had a stroke. And in particular, when it comes to genetics, look at which bits of the genetic code are important in determining risk of stroke. This is perhaps not so much to be able to predict who's likely to have a stroke and who isn't, because that's an extraordinarily complex task. But it's more to get some information that might help us to understand some of the root causes of different types of stroke, and through better understanding the mechanisms of different types of stroke and the disease pathways, then we will better be able to move forward towards developing better and more targeted treatments that can be made available to individual patients like the ones I see in my clinics.